Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Hunter, and like Leanne said, today we're talking all about how to prep for the MCAT. It is a huge, daunting hurdle for many pre-meds. In fact, for the vast majority of us, until we actually get to med school, and then you have to do step 1, step 2 USMLEs. The MCAT, it's like the biggest stressor, and it's the reason for a lot of gray hairs. It's why I have so many gray hairs personally. Like Leanne said, I've taken the MCAT, and I've taken the MCAT many times. Lots of full lengths, but we'll talk about all of that. But really, the reason why it's so important to talk about how to prep for the MCAT is because it's so huge. Like, how do you prep for something that is this big? A lot of times it's very daunting. It's very overwhelming. And unfortunately, as human beings, when things overwhelm us, we tend to just ignore it until a month or so before our exam. And then we go, oh yeah, I guess I can wing it. Usually not the best strategy. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. We've got a whole agenda going on, a little bit of intro, some MCAT overview. We're going to plan your MCAT journey, how to like prepare to take it. Like, it's the pre-planning phases. So prepare for it. I'm going to walk you through the basics of building a study schedule. That'll kind of help you out, and it'll walk you through there. And then, yeah, like Leanne said, we'll talk about a little bit how Blueprint can help. I promise I am the most upfront person about how big of a Blueprint shill I am. I'm a Blueprint instructor. I'm a Blueprint tutor. Like, Blueprint's pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie. That being said, I promise not to be super gross and like salesy and used car salesman-y. We have a whole bunch of free stuff, and not like raffles. Like, you can just go and download some free things, and I'm gonna show you all about that later. So without any further ado, let's do a real quick intro, because who the heck am I, right? So like I said, my name's Hunter. Hey, what's up? I'm an instructor. I'm a tutor. That's cool. I've actually been doing this for like about 8 years or so. So like in this picture, I had much less gray hair than I do now. And right after school, I went to Arizona State University. Woo, go Sun Devils, for biochem. And I was like, all right, I'm doing it pre-med. We're hitting the gate. Like, we're coming out the gate strong, hitting the pavement running. And then I realized that I wanted to take a gap year, and I started teaching at a nonprofit called the Arizona Science Center. And I was teaching science to kids, and it was really fun. Long story short, I got to be Arizona's Bill Nye the Science guy. Like, I would just take science experiments to schools all across Arizona, and they would be like, all right, like, all the third graders, let's go to the assembly hall, and the science guy is going to do some cool stuff. And I would like blow things up and like do dissections with kids. It was super rad. Most fun job I've ever had. Don't tell Blueprint that. Sorry, my boss who's watching. But yeah, easily, hands down, most fun job I've ever had. And that gap year turned into a gap 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then I was like, you know what? Let's get back into it. Start prepping for the MCAT again as a non-traditional. So I've got a little bit of non-trad experience behind me. Took the MCAT, did phenomenally well, got a 521, hooray, go me. And then realized that I just like teaching. So I didn't want to go to med school anymore. I just wanted to keep teaching. But like, I took the MCAT, so might as well teach MCAT, right? So sorry, third graders across Arizona, no more photosynthesis and mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. Instead, we're talking oxyhemoglobin dissociation curves and stuff like that. And then last but not least, a little bit like side fun things. It's really just an excuse for me to show off pictures of my dogs. I am bossed around by 2 lovely little canines. We have Leia, Princess Leia, on the left, and Winston, the corgi, on the right. So these are my dogs. They're amazing. I love them. They're locked out. So if you hear barking, sorry, someone knocked out the door. And long story short, I don't know, I just like really dorky things. So enough about me. Let's dive into it. The MCAT, it is a mile wide, right? It's basically an exam that tests you not only on 4 years of undergraduate science, but critical thinking and application of all 4 of those years. So it is a mile wide, but I always tell my students that it's only an inch deep. So it is very manageable. Now I'm going to start this off just by assuming that if you're here and you are like, hey, I need to just like have a conversation and ask some questions. We're going to do Q&A at the very end of this. I need to ask some questions about like, how do I study for this? I'm going to assume that you are in the beginning phases of your MCAT prep. So let's go over just some like MCAT basics, right? So the exam itself, hey, you got to take it to get to medical school. That's what MCAT stands for. It's an acronym. It's multiple choice, computer-based, standardized exam. And a lot of people hate standardized exams. I mean, let's get real. No one has fun taking tests. Unless you're a Blueprint instructor who essentially has Stockholm syndrome, in which case, like, yeah, like the MCAT's kind of fun, y'all. Like, don't get me wrong. It can be. My classes are fun. The AMC are the people who write it. They are the ones who administer it. There are 4 sections on it. We have 3 science sections and a cars section. And it is a 6.25, 6.25 hour exam, but that is just literally how much time you are going to be testing. If you include all of your optional breaks, they have a tutorial in the beginning. There's a lunch in the middle of it because it's essentially like a whole shift at work. You get a lunch break. It's more or less you're testing for 8 hours. And they don't give you a calculator. I always take this for granted and assume that this is just like known. But yeah, they don't give you a calculator. There's always a couple students who are like, wait, what? How are we supposed to do logs without a calculator? There are ways. Let me tell you what, there are ways. We teach you. You will have a periodic table, and this is more or less what the entire test looks like, right? So the first section, we've got, there's like an examinee agreement and optional tutorial. Cool, really just use that extra time. It's like 10-ish minutes to put yourself into a Zen-like state and go like, all right, I'm about to take the MCAT. Let's lower my heart rate and chill out a little bit. Then you dive into it. You have your chem phys. You have a 10-minute break. It's not optional. Please just take all your breaks. The MCAT takes so much from us already. It takes so much from us. Don't let them take those extra 10-minute breaks that they give you, okay? Take those 10 minutes back. Then you have your CARs, or your critical analysis and reasoning skills. That's the reading section that everybody loves so much. Then you've got your lunch, and then we do biochem, and then we do psych-soc. So this is what the day looks like. You're in for a good time. Trust me, it'll be a ton of fun. Like I mentioned before, it is a critical thinking test. And what I mean by that is, yes, you do have to have all of your formulas memorized. Yes, you need to know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's tons of content that you need to have memorized for it, but it's not like your undergraduate exams where it's like, hey, do you know this? What is the powerhouse of the cell? Hey, mitochondria. Cool, you got your point. They don't reward you for knowing your content. I always tell my students that the MCAT expects you to know your content, right? Very rarely will it just be a, hey, do you know this fact? Usually they're going to go, and by they, I mean like the MCAT. I'm anthropomorphizing it. It is now a living, breathing entity. The MCAT will go like, hey, I expect you to know what the citric acid cycle is. I expect you to know this thing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it. I'm going to say that there's a mutation and the third enzyme no longer functions. What are the downstream effects? So that's what I mean by it's a critical thinking test. They expect you to know your content. They're going to give you some new information, usually in the passages or in the question stems, and then you have to reason your way to the answer. So it's a really challenging test for that reason, because a lot of the times, especially in our undergraduate, we haven't had to do that. It's been mostly memorize, regurgitate, and then the day after the exam, info dump, right? We instantly forget everything. Side note, if you know you're going to be taking the MCAT, don't info dump all of your science classes, because you'll need to know all that stuff again for the MCAT, and it's just way easier if you kind of just remember it. But yeah, more or less, here are all the different science topics that they're going to be quizzing you on: Gen Chem, Orgo, Biochem, Physics, Psych, and Soc. That's all of it. There's more nuances throughout there. And in fact, the AMC, if you go to their website, they have something called the content outline. It is, my bullet point here says, it is a great resource. I'm going to change it to say, it's a resource. It is, without a doubt, the most comprehensive list of here's everything that will be tested on the MCAT. They don't actually give you the formulas or teach you the stuff. They just say kinematics, right? They're not going to give you the equations. You have to figure that out on your own. But it is exhaustive. It is comprehensive. That resource, the AMC content outline, it's like 100, 150 pages. It's huge. So again, in the vein of like, hey, the MCAT can be pretty overwhelming and daunting, usually that content outline doesn't help mitigate those feelings. It just kind of exacerbates them. But it is a resource. If you want to know exactly everything that's on the exam, go check that out. Highly recommend it. And content knowledge, like I said, you need to know all your science. It's expected in all the different science subjects or sections on the exam, but not CARs. CARs is the one, and I'm sure you've all heard this, but we still make the mistake a million times. Don't bring any outside information to CARs. Everything you need for CARs is going to be right there in the passage in front of you. Now, this is roughly on the right side. My camera's mirrored. On this side of your screen, this is roughly a general breakdown of the percentages that you can expect to see certain topics pop up in the sections of the exam. And I always ask my students, hey, what subjects are you the most freaked out about? And physics and orgo are always number 1 and 2. Usually there's a couple other ones sprinkled in there, but physics and organic chemistry are like nightmare fuel for my pre-med students. Luckily, they're also some of the most infrequently tested subjects on the exam. Now, please do not go home, or if you're already home, because like, yay, Zoom life. If you don't leave this and go like, well, Hunter said that Orgo's never going to get tested, and so I don't need to study it. That's not true. I did not say that. I just said it's going to be tested a little less frequently than something like general biology or general chemistry, right? You still need to know it, but the crux of my argument here is don't spend the last month leading up to test day just reading a physics textbook cover to cover because it stresses you out. That is not an efficient use of your time. There are much better ways to spend your time prepping, and there are much more efficient ways to build a study plan. So that's what we're kind of talking about today. As y'all know, the MCAT, it's scored. Heck yes, you take a test, you're going to get some numbers afterwards, right? So essentially it's saying there's 3 different scores that you could look at. There's the raw score, which is literally, I got, 50 questions right. Cool. There's a scaled score, which it is scaled. It's not curved. The AMC is very particular about this. They don't curve it. They scale it. And so they plug your raw score in, they compare it to everyone else's raw scores, and then you get a number, right? It's either 472 to 528. We're all aiming for 528s because 528 day. Heck yes. Boom. Today's May 28th. See? Fun. But that's a perfect score, essentially. And the way they do that is they just add up a 118 to 132 for the 4 different sections. Boom, here's your scaled score. Then once you get a scaled score, you can turn that into a percentage or a percentile. You've probably heard a million times. You've probably said a million times, I want to be in like those upper percentiles. I want to be in the 90th percentile or the 99th percentile, etc. That basically means if you are in the 90th percentile, you did better than 90% of other students. So that's what that means in case you didn't know. And also, once you get into those higher percentiles, it's less of a difference to jump several percentile points, right? Because it's essentially, it's not scaled, but the curve, it looks like a bell curve. And when you're in the middle, you're sitting at that like 500, 501 mark. That's where a lot more students are. So even if you get a couple questions right, you're going to go up just a little bit. But when you get to the wings here, either doing really good or really bad. There's not very many people there. So if you just get a couple extra questions right, you can jump huge amounts of percentiles. So keep that in mind. You don't need to get a perfect score. You just need to do better than everyone else. So what's considered a good MCAT score? I get that literally I get that question every single class. It depends. It depends on what school you're trying to apply to. It depends what the rest of your application looks like, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, it depends is kind of a cop-out answer. No one's ever happy with it. So here are some actual numbers, right? The 50th percentile, it's slowly going up. It used to be 500. Now it's like 501.5. There are no decimal points on the actual scoring, but somehow the AMC has calculated that 501.5 is the average for the 50th percentile. 80th percentile is 510, 99th is 522 to 523, right? The mean MCAT score for matriculants, and matriculants means people who got accepted into a school, that was 511.5. So 511 is the average or the mean of people who get in. Keep that in mind. That being said, you can do your own research. Look into every school that you're interested in applying to. They all will tell you the stats for them, for their like matriculants and their applicants. And you can figure out like, not every school is a 511, right? Some people get into certain schools with like a 501. Some people get into schools with like a 502. So just do some research. Long story short, it's not that hard. Just do some Googling. You got this. So no, that's all the way. Cool. We all know about the MCAT, whatever. Let's talk about how to plan our journey really fast. Couple of things that I always tell my students to pay attention to. When are you planning on taking it? Because that is going to determine so much of what your life looks like for about a year. Okay. When are you going to be taking it? Are you taking a gap year? How many prerequisites have you taken? How many prerequisites do you still need to take if you're still an undergraduate? If you're not an undergraduate and you've graduated, do you need to go back and do some extra content review, et cetera, et cetera? Are you going to be studying for the MCAT while you're still in school? Are you going to do it over summer, which like, hey, it's May 28th. There's a whole bunch of students who just started summer and they're looking forward to, they are planning on studying for their MCAT over the summer break, and they're going to take it pretty soon. If you are planning on taking it during the semester, are you going to like plan your semester to accommodate that? A lot of students will kind of take easier, quote unquote, classes so that they can kind of focus more on their MCAT prep. Because let me tell you what, like prepping for the MCAT, it's almost like having a full-time job. So it's a lot. And then, yeah, how many months do you have? When do you plan on taking the test? When are you planning on applying? All these things are going to play a factor. So let's talk about how to actually prep for taking the MCAT itself. There are prerequisites. There's always one class. Always, and when I say class, I mean like an MCAT prep class. There's always one class where I have a student that goes like, hey, I didn't take Gen Chem, or I haven't taken Orgo, or I haven't taken Biochem. Like, is it cool if I'm still here? It makes it exponentially more difficult to prep for the MCAT if you are seeing the material for the very first time. That being said, it's not impossible. A lot of students are like currently in their biochem class as they're in my class studying for the MCAT. And a lot of the times it's kind of nice because like their undergraduate class coincides with what we're covering in our MCAT class. So like as they're learning in class, we're also talking about in our MCAT prep, kind of works out. That being said, if you are like, hey, I need to take my MCAT in 3 months and I have never taken a single biochem class, or I've never taken an organic chemistry class, it's not impossible, but it's much more challenging. So just keep that in mind, okay? So highly recommended that you take a lot of the prerequisites for your major, just like baseline science classes, Gen Chem, Biochem, Orgo, things like that, physics, etc. Take that physics lab, shoot those lasers, do those mirrors, all that good stuff. Things that aren't required but might help you out. Any upper level biology class, anatomy, physiology, neurology, immunology, endocrinology, you can read that list here, right? All of these are going to help you out, but it isn't like a prerequisite for the MCAT. So take those as you will. And like I said, if you're missing if there's a huge gap in your content, if it's just a semester, cool, you might be able to like either self-prep or you can take that class during that semester. But like if you're missing a whole year's worth of content, 2 semesters of a class that, you know, it's Orgo 1, Orgo 2, or anything along those lines, like it might be kind of challenging. Physics 1, Physics 2, that's probably a better example. Orgo 2, usually not too much inorganic chemistry. But with that being said, here are the things that you should think about. We're just going to burn through these real fast. Like, man, I wish I had a little bit more time with y'all, but 528 day, there's so much going on. What should your study plan include, right? Content review, obviously. And this is the fatal mistake that a lot of my students make is they spend not an inordinate amount, but they spend the majority of their time doing purely content review. So what do I mean by that? Just reading textbooks cover to cover, just watching nothing but content review videos and like taking pages and pages of notes, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, you need to do that, but don't spend like 90% of your time on content review. There are much better ways to prep for the exam. And in fact, there are required ways to study for the exam that are going to help you out a lot more than just reading textbooks, right? Spoiler, the best way to prep for the MCAT is by taking a whole bunch of MCAT. So applied practice, full-length exams that are practiced and not scored, like Q banks, doing passage-based problems is going to be the best way for you to prep for the MCAT. But it's really hard to do those passages if you don't have the content knowledge that they're building off of. So that's kind of the balance there. I usually say taking the MCAT is 1/3 your content knowledge, 1/3 your like just practicing it, and then 1/3 like knowing what to expect on the MCAT and just being familiar with the exam itself. So there's a lot that goes into it. Like I said earlier, it's not just memorization, regurgitation. You can't just vomit out like here's formulas and you get your points. It doesn't quite work like that. Great visual, I know. So content review, strategy, and practice is definitely probably 1/3 of it. And then you should also try to use the AAMC resources. There are dozens of different resources out there. I happen to think that Blueprint Prep is one of the better ones. And a lot of people do too. That being said, coming from the horse's mouth is probably one of the best resources you can get. In this case, the horse is the AAMC. Yes, I just called the AAMC a horse inadvertently. I'm very sorry. That being said, usually you want to get a couple of their practice tests in because it is written by the people who are writing the actual MCAT. Fun fact, if you sign up for a Blueprint course, or if you win the raffle and get a free Blueprint course, every single resource from the AAMC that they have on their own, we include with our course, so you don't have to buy them again. Hooray. And then just talking about like length, how long do people tend to study for the MCAT? The AAMC says about 260 hours for the average test taker. You can break that into like roughly 11 hours a week for about 6 months. We're not average though. Who wants to be in that 500, 501, 501.5 area? No way. We want to be in those upper percentiles. So usually I recommend to my students 300, 350-ish hours, split up minimum over like 4-ish months. So take that as you will, plan your life accordingly. And a couple things just to note while you're doing your content review, while you're studying for it, etc. Spaced repetition is fantastic. If you aren't familiar with it, just do a quick Google search, brief elevator pitch of spaced repetition. You cover the things that you're not familiar with more frequently than the things that you're very familiar with. There it is. You spread it out over a week. Anki is a great example of it. I am a huge fan of, because I have gray hair and I'm old, I'm a huge fan of physical flashcards. Hey, and you can do spaced repetition with your physical flashcards as well. Just make piles of them, etc. Like, I have no idea what these are. I kind of know what these are. I definitely know what these are, and cover them in a frequency that makes sense. Taking full lengths is super important. Schedule that into your study plan. Usually, the most successful students are going to be taking anywhere between like 7, 8, 9 full-length exams. I think I took 10, not including my diagnostic, around there. So yeah, take a lot of full lengths. Just as like a sneak preview into my life, I told you I was a non-traditional student, right? So I'd been out of school for several years when I started prepping for my MCAT. And I was working full time, Monday through Friday at a 9 to 5. Hey. So what towards the end of my studying, right? In the beginning, it was a lot of content review. And then I kind of started to switch and do applied practice and taking more and more exams. Saturdays were my full length day. So I took a full length exam on Saturday, 8 hours or so, went through the whole thing, test-like conditions. And then I didn't think about the MCAT for the rest of the day because that's a lot of MCAT. Then the next day on Sunday, I would review that exam. Usually it would take me about like just as long, if not longer, to review it than it took me to take it. So like 8 to 10 hours-ish, that would be all day Sunday. And then based on the results of my full length that I just took, that would dictate the content that I wanted to study Monday through Friday in the evening when I got home from work. So that's kind of what like my last month and a half of prep looked like. So try to build a plan that emulates something along those lines. Not exactly, but whatever works for your life. But please, in all of that, make sure you're prepping cars. Usually 1 to 2 cars passages a day. Definitely going to help you out. This is what a great study plan kind of looks like. And if this looks kind of familiar to you, it might be because you checked out Blueprint's free resources. I'll talk about the free stuff in a little bit. But this is what the Blueprint study planning tool looks like. Long story short, you plug in, hey, I want to take the test on this day. I'm starting to study on this day. I can dedicate this many hours per week. Go. And it will generate an entire like study plan for you. It tells you exactly what to study, when to study it, how long to study it. And it even gives you like, if this is part of your course, it gives you the like chapters, the modules, the videos, and the quizzes right here, and you can just do it. You can also drag and drop. So if you go, oh no, something came up on Thursday, I can't do microbiology and biotech, I'm going to move those to Friday. You can just drag and drop. So our study planner is super dope. I highly recommend checking it out. And you can get a free one. Yay. So we'll get back to that. Long story short, critical thinking. It is a critical thinking exam. Please don't just try to memorize everything and go into it. Application and applied practice is going to be the #1 thing that you need to work on. It's one of the hardest things for students to kind of get in the habit of. I call it like seeing the matrix, or like thinking like the test makers, right? But that's the great thing about standardized tests, is that they are standardized. They're more or less the same every single time. The AAMC can't just pull like some radically new test out of left field. It took them decades to just do the 2015 revamp for the MCAT, right? So we can more or less predict what's going to be on the exam, how they're going to present it to us. And we can also sort of predict like what the answer choices are going to look like, what the questions are going to look like. They're just filling in different numbers and different like facts. So that's kind of why I like standardized exams. We can almost gamify it. And we start to see the matrix and we start to make predictions. So it's pretty great. But again, this page is just saying, hey, don't do 100% content review. You need to practice it too. The best way to score well on the MCAT is by taking the MCAT. And you need to do it over a long chunk of time. You can't just be a doctor in a weekend. Who knew? Who knew? So with that being said, let's do some really quick basics on how to build a timeline. If you are planning on prepping during your school year Or if you have a full-time job, more or less, this is roughly, there's asterisks all over the place here, but this is what it's going to look like, right? So 5 to 6 months before test day, you are going to be doing a lot of science review. You're going to start looking at some like MCAT style questions. At Blueprint, you can sign up for, we have an MCAT question of the day. And like, it's just a great way to just become familiar with it, be exposed to like a question every single day. It's a new question, et cetera, et cetera. And then we post like the answers. So it's great. But that's a great way for you to just kind of become exposed to it. Do that for a few months. Then about 3-4-ish months, then you're going to kind of pivot. You're going to pivot a little bit, start doing MCAT style practice questions. What do I mean by that? It is either discrete or more appropriately, passage based. So go through passages, figure out what that's like, maybe start working on like your pacing, et cetera, et cetera. And then do some spaced repetition so that you don't forget like flashcards and stuff like that, so that you don't forget the things that you studied 2 months ago, because that's going to happen. And then 1 month before test day, you're doing AAMC materials. You're going to do some AAMC practice exams, and you're just going to get ready to take the test. The last month is like the most exciting and the most anxiety-inducing month for a lot of my students. But like that last month is really, I don't know, there's an electric feeling in the air. It's electric. Anyways, if you're planning prep over the summer, or you just kind of have an open schedule, et cetera, might look a little different. You might not have to spread it out over 6 months. You can probably do it 3-4-ish months. But more or less same thing, right? It's just over a shorter time span because you have more hours per week to dedicate to the MCAT. Makes sense, right? So it's more or less what your timeline is going to look like. So now that we've like talked about timelines, we've talked about like, what the MCAT is, et cetera, here are all the different assets, all the different ways that you can get content, all the different materials, et cetera, resources, whatever you want to call it. So there are content review books, duh. Those are great for passive studying. We call it passive studying because you're not actually like practicing. You're not taking the formula that you just read in the book and like using it to work a problem. You're just kind of taking notes, doing flashcards, et cetera. It's good for like big picture content review, but that's about it. It isn't going to get you that score you want on the MCAT just by doing content alone. Question banks are fantastic because they are like really quick. Like here's a passage and a couple questions. We have question banks, AMC has question banks, et cetera, et cetera. They're great. Full lengths are fantastic. I will always push for full length exams. Take as many as you can. Don't do more than one a week. That's a little ridiculous. And you might burn yourself out. Burnout is very real. Okay. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So, don't burn yourself out. Especially I had one student that was like, I'm going to take 3 MCAT full lengths the week of my actual test. And it's like, no, please don't do that. You will melt. So yeah, full lengths, I can't recommend it enough. Just make sure that you're reviewing the test that you just took. Don't just take it, look at your score and go, oh yay, or oh man, and then like never look at it again. You need to spend like 10 hours reviewing every single question, every single problem, every single answer, even if you got it right. Go through the whole test and make sure you understand why you're getting things right and getting things wrong. Lastly, there's video lectures, flashcards, and then if you want some extra help, which like a lot of people do, it is a monster of an exam, and sometimes it can just be really useful to have someone who's gone through the whole thing and show you the ropes, right? At this point in my MCAT career, I've taken 2 real MCATs because I'm old. I took one that was pre-2015 with the old scoring, the 32 digits. And then I took another one that had the 3 digits. So yeah, that's where my 521 came from. But yeah, I took 2 real ones and I've taken dozens of full lengths. Like, I don't even think I'm exaggerating when I say like over 30. So like, it's a lot of full lengths. So like, hey, I've seen it all. I could definitely help you out. So can any of our other Blueprint instructors. But if you do want us to hang out with you or somebody to hang out with you, personalized tutoring is great if you want like one-on-one. I do tutoring and I love tutoring. I think it's kind of like a puzzle because I just get to talk to the student and go like, hey, how come you missed this question? Like, let's really dig through and like, let me find the one solution that's going to like pivot your thought process and get you to the right answer. And I also teach our live online courses, which are a ton of fun because that like, it's a huge group environment. It's really electric. The chat's blowing up. Like it's a good time in the class. So yeah, either one of them are fantastic if you want some extra help. But more or less, like we've been talking about this whole time, here's how you're going to plan on building your study schedule, right? Review your content, look at things that are covered on the exam, identify your strengths and weaknesses, right? Dedicate more time. A lot of people like to go like, orgo is scary and I don't like it, so I'm going to avoid it. There is no avoidance defense mechanism here, right? We can't do that. We have to be exposed to all the stuff we don't want to. We don't want to see. So dive into the things that you're unfamiliar with or the things that challenge you, because it's going to pay off dividends. Do practice questions, Q-banks, full lengths. We've already talked about it. Again, you need some of that content. So do some content and then dive into it, but like, don't just do like 3 months worth of content. It's a lot. That being said, cars is the exception. There's no content for cars. Everything that you need to know for cars is right there in the passage in front of you. It is an open book test, essentially. I love cars, much to the chagrin of all of my students. They groan when I tell them that I love cars because literally it's an open book test. The answers are right in front of you. You just need to be trained on how to think the way that the cars MCAT section wants you to think. So that's the tricky part. But since there is no content for cars, you can't just like study formulas. You're going to be doing cars passages for like well before you start doing science passages. When you're still doing science content review, taking notes, watching videos, doing flashcards, you're going to be doing a daily cars passage, like non-negotiable. Do daily cars. Even if you're good at cars, do daily cars. That way you don't forget, or that way it doesn't slip out from under you, right? That's one of the worst things where you go, no, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. And then you get closer to your test day, you haven't practiced it and you lose it. And then spaced repetition, it's fantastic. Talked about it a little bit. This is what spaced repetition looks like, okay? My flashcards. I showed you my big old stack. I would go through my flashcards every single night, like 30, 40 minutes before bed. And I broke them out into sections. So like, I'm going to review my physics flashcards tonight. Cool. Go through the entire pile. If you have no idea what the answer of a flashcard is, it goes into like a far left pile. I don't know what these answers are. If you kind of know what it is, you were halfway there, but like you weren't 100% sure, goes into a middle pile of like, I'm 50-50 on it. And then if you totally know what it is, it goes into a far right. Yes, I've got this flashcard memorized. And then you keep those piles, you keep those associations. And then the next time you review them, you go through your, I have no idea what the answer of this flashcard is pile. You go through that like every other day, every day, something like that, really, really frequently. And then you go through your, I kind of know this, but I'm not 100% there. Go through that a little less frequently, maybe every 3-4 days, right? And then I totally know this pile. Yes, I've got this memorized. Go through that like once a week, maybe even once every other week, right? That way you're studying the things that you don't know more frequently than the things that you do know, but you're still covering the things that you know so you don't forget them. That being said, sometimes you will forget them. Or sometimes you start to memorize the things that you don't know. Heck yes, it's working. In that case, spaced repetition allows for like flexibility. It's always moving. So if you get something right that was in your I have no idea pile, you move it to your middle pile. It gets promoted. Yay. And then if you get something in your middle pile, right, it goes to your far right pile. I've got this memorized now. The opposite is also true. If you start to forget things and you go to a flashcard and you're like, ooh, actually, I don't remember this, it gets demoted a pile. So it's this constantly ebbing and flowing pile of flashcards. And that's why spaced repetition is pretty fantastic for memorizing like quick little facts. What is the powerhouse of the cell? What does alanine look like, et cetera? Your amino acids, formulas, functional group, like things like that. It's fantastic. Hey, y'all, did you know that Blueprint has free flashcards that cover all those things? Heck yes. So yeah, more or less, that's all it is. We can go past this. So let's talk. I just gave you like the little bit of like, hey, we have free stuff. Here's how Blueprint can help. We've got classes, obviously. Last year in 2020, holy cow, it's been a year. We came out with a brand new course. And I'm a Blueprint shill. Y'all know this, but like from my most objective, unbiased point of view, it's the best class out there. All of the videos there are animations. It isn't like a 3-hour lecture that's just recorded with a floating head. There's like illustrations, there's animations, like it walks through everything. And it's like quick little like 15 minutes to cover this. Here's a little quiz. Here's another 10-minute video. Here's a quiz. Here's something. So it's got something for everybody. And like literally, again, the study planner tool, it's built into the class. It incorporates the class. And like, if you just follow, like, here's an example on this mobile version of the planner. Wow. If you just go through with a study plan of like study all these things on these days and then take your test, you're going to be in really good shape. So I think the course is fantastic. Truthfully, I wish that I had like the study planner tool and this particular like Blueprint course when I was prepping for the MCAT. So there you go. I'm a little envious. We also have fantastic MCAT practice exams. We've got like 10 of them. They're the closest thing you can get without going to the AAMC. So they're fantastic. They're amazing. We all know what a practice exam is. We now have a brand new live online course, which we never had before. This is brand new as far as it just launched in January. So the first round of classes have just finished. We're doing other ones. Like, they're such a good time. I'm an instructor for these classes, and let me tell you, like, I love it. It's super fun in there. We've got 2 instructors on camera, and I think that's why, because it isn't just like a boring monotone lecture. It's literally like me and one of my fellow nerdy MCAT buds, and we just kind of like talk about like, hey, how would you do this? What is this like? Oh yeah. Oh, do you have a mnemonic? Oh, what's it? And like, it's this really fun back and forth between the 2 of us and the chat and the class, and like, it's a good time in there. So check it out. I think it's really fun. Here's the important part, and it's so important that my own face is on there. Look at that. Thanks, marketing team. We have a whole bunch of free stuff. So if you want to check out what those like modules look like with the videos, you can get free videos. If you want to check out what our practice exams look like, you can get a free full length. You can even check out like the customizable study planner, all that stuff that I've been talking about. Go to this website. If you just go to blueprintprep.com, click on MCAT, and then there's a little tab that says free resources. You can get all of this for free. So like, this is why I want to talk to y'all. Take advantage of the free stuff, check it out. And if you like it, hang out with us a little bit longer, whatever, it's up to you. But check out the free stuff. Question of the day, et cetera, blog posts, so on and so forth. Now, this is the one thing that is brand new and actually just got introduced like a week or so ago. We have a flashcard pack, and it goes over all of the best things that flashcards are used for. Your amino acids, your formulas, your functional groups, et cetera, and they're free. So go check it out. It's on the same place. You can also go to mcatflashcards.com. You can get them. They're fantastic and they're free. And like, I honestly, the best thing for me is when my students just shoot me an email and they're like, hey, I got this score. It was super awesome. Thank you so much. I love helping students out because the MCAT can be super stressful and it can be like the worst experience in the world if you let it be. I am very much of the opinion that it doesn't have to be. I like the MCAT. I like studying science. I think it's cool. It changes the way that I thought about the world. And I want to share that with students too. So that's why I'm really big on like the free stuff. That's why I want you all to check out the flashcards, check out like the free student resources, this stuff with that handsome devil. Because like, honestly, it's just going to help y'all out. So even if you don't take my class, even if you're not my tutoring student, I want you to do well. This is going to help you do well. So yeah, check it out. I'm done. I'm done being a shill. Now it's Q&A. You guys have any questions? Hit me up. Let me know. I think our national pre-med people are going to be feeding me questions, but I live for it. It doesn't even have to be about how to prep for the MCAT. It can be any question. You can ask me about kinematics. Oh, Mia, look at this. It's popping up on the screen. How cool. Do pre-meds with documented learning disabilities get accommodations? Yes, you have to reach out to the AAMC. They do accommodations. I don't know the specifics of what you have to provide to them, but yes, either call them, email them, go to the AAMC's website. There are accommodations. So yes, check that out and take advantage of it. Heck yes, like 100%. Totally. Good question. Why did I become an MCAT instructor as opposed to a physician? That is a good question as well. I think it is twofold. One, when I was teaching at the Arizona Science Center, it was way too much fun. And I don't know if y'all can tell from this presentation, but like, I like talking to people. I like being really extroverted and overt and so on and so forth. But I also happen to like science at the same time. So teaching MCAT science and like teaching MCAT prep, it's this super hyper niche area that I've been able to like wiggle my way into and like make a living off of that. And like, I get to do both of the things that I love doing. I get to talk to people. I get to nerd out and be dorky with like a bunch of students all the time. But I also get to talk about like real intense science and not just, hey, third graders, let's talk about photosynthesis. Like that wasn't filling my bucket. So like, this is really the best of both worlds. And I didn't want, here's the other one. I didn't want to go $250,000 in debt. And I didn't want to finish school in my 30s. So I wanted to get out there and have fun and live life and meet all of y'all. Actually, like the reason why I love this so much and why I keep doing it for this long is because the students are dope. So good question. Long story short, I was broke and I like hanging out with you guys.
Hi, All right.
Hi,
Awesome. Yay! Okay, you know what? We are exactly on time, and that was awesome. Guys, Hunter, he's amazing, and we love him. And I love that somebody put in the comment, they said National Pre-Med Day is free largely because of Blueprint MCAT. So thank you. And thank you. Thank you to them.
Hey, you guys are awesome. Thank you so
Hunter,
much for having us.
How could people reach out or if they have any questions?
Oh, yeah, you can go to Blueprint. You can reach out to us, mcat@blueprintprep.com. We've got, I mean, even if you just go to our, honestly, the quickest way, real talk, go to blueprintprep.com/mcat, and there's a little chat function. And we have like a team of people that are right there to answer your questions in real time. So if you have a question, that's the fastest way. Otherwise, email us, check out some of our free resources, etc., etc.
Great. Thank you so much.